Hey friends, this is Michael Levine, and I'm at Butterfly Loft in Encino with Pulp Riot. Today I'm going to create a modern shag. This haircut's got a very sexy, textured, rock and roll kind of feeling, and I'm going to be using one of my favorite layering techniques. It's a vertical concave layer. It's my go-to technique for a lot of different cuts because you can achieve almost anything just by changing your elevations or your angles and your lengths. And most importantly, it's fast, foolproof, and super easy. In fact, I kind of feel like I'm cheating when I use this technique. Here we are with Amanda, and before we get started with her cut, I'm going to walk you through what we did with her color. So we mixed mostly lilac with just a little bit of velvet to add a bit more depth. You want to be careful when you're adding your dark colors to your light colors that you don't overpower the light, so just be aware of that. For Amanda's color, I wanted to create kind of a lived-in, slightly smoky, violet-y, purple kind of color, and we ended up with a really, really nice lived-in kind of look. I'm going to jump right into the layering as it's way more fun than doing a perimeter first, and it allows you to see the layering and how it affects the perimeter. The sectioning is done in standard quadrants right down the middle from front to nape and then ear to ear across the high point of the head. I like to use the high point of the head as my reference rather than the crown because everything falls from the top at that point. Since the focal point of this haircut is the front, we're going to start with the front. I'm going to stand on my model's right side as I create the layers for her left side. So for my first section, we're going to be over-directing everything to the center in a mohawk, and we're going to be working off the curvature of the head, which curves here and then flattens out right here. We're going to elevate the hair into the center, and we're going to angle our hand into a position to give us the length and the texture that we're looking for. The only rule here is that the hair is elevated perpendicular to her head. The entire haircut is very, very simple. In many ways, it can be a super easy haircut, but it's also very complex and dynamic as your angles are constantly changing based on the curvature of the head. Because this cut is over-directed to the center, and over-direction creates length, as we all know, we should always want to err on the side of over-directing too much rather than not enough. It's always better to cut hair too long rather than too short. We all know this. So with this in mind, we're going to stand on the opposite side of the head that we're cutting. It's more comfortable and it's easier to keep our hands and our arms closer to our bodies than pushing them away. We're using our natural tendency to bring our arms in to our advantage. You'll notice that I'm cutting my lines straight rather than point cutting. At this stage, we're looking for a clean guideline for the entire haircut. We're going to put in some texture once we know that we've executed a clean cut. The next section and all remaining sections are going to be parallel to that first section, but they're going to be over-directed into that first section and then cut into that guideline of that mohawk. The size of each section will be determined by the thickness of your client's hair. I don't believe in taking tiny sections when you're cutting to a stationary guide unless it's necessary. I believe in being efficient, so if you can clearly see through the new section to your guideline, go ahead and cut. Now that we've finished the first side, we're going to move our body to the other side that we've just finished and start working the opposite side for the layers again. We're going to take a small guideline from our first section and we're going to start working the hair on the opposite side into that guide. So now we're just going to cross-check and make sure that if we did it right, we should go from short to long. When this hair falls into place, there's going to be more separation and texture through the top than with an on-base layer. To connect the front to the back, we're going to continue using the same idea of over-directing everything to the center. This time, we're connecting the front to the high point of the head. I need to take a little bit of my front section to create my kind of jumping off point for the back. So instead of just using my quadrant, I'm just going to now just skim off about 1 centimeter of the front so that when I join it in to the back, I can see where I've left off. So remember, we're going to still stand on the opposite side that we're cutting. It's hard to remember sometimes to do this, but when the difference between right and wrong in hairdressing is millimeters, it's important to be consistent and use every tool that we have to help us. As we move to the opposite and final quadrant of our layers, we have to make sure that we're following a similar angle as the previous side. Just like I did at the front, I'm going to take off a little wee mohawk, and that's going to be our guideline so that we can match our angles for her right side. The The angle as we work down the occipital bone is entirely up to you and how deeply you want to layer the hair. In the 90s, we'd go really, really deep, but we don't want to create such a structured shape right now. We want the hair to have enough length that it moves. So we're going to angle our hands out a little bit rather than following the round of her head too much. Now that the haircut is roughed in, we get to have a bit of fun and break it up with some texturizing. It's important that we don't undo the hard work that we've done, so we've got to be a little bit conservative and keep in mind the reason that we over-directed in the first place. So you're going to start with vertical sections at the back of her head. We're going to pull it out like this, and we're going to scoop out little C's inside our fingers. Because this area isn't overly layered, we can be a bit more aggressive here as the hair tends to be a bit thicker below the occipital bone. So now that the back is opened up a bit, we're going to thin up the top and front areas a little by taking wide mohawk sections and point cutting into the density. Starting with the hair through the crown, we're going to take big sections and we're going to work our scissors across our fingers and then slide up and go back across, working our shears the other way. It kind of reminds me of like an old-timey cartoon character eating corn on the cob. Ching, 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 but I'm weird. The trick to not cutting yourself when doing this is to keep the shears open until they touch your finger and then close them as you're pulling the shears away. Ow, psych. It looks a bit intense, but it's really easy and very safe once you get the movement down. Okay, so we've pretty much finished Amanda's haircut. I didn't need to texturize anything on the sides because her hair's sitting quite nicely, and it's an important thing that you evaluate the hair before you decide what you're gonna do. Last but not least, we're going to cut her bangs. We're going to start with a triangular section from recession to the other side of recession, about 2 inches deep. Unless you're really confident with what you're doing, don't go too deep or too short at first. You can always go back in and cut the bangs shorter if you need to. So you're going to turn your comb backwards and comb the hair down past where you want the longest point of the bangs to sit. Elevate your comb out just a little bit, and then you're going to point cut along the bottom. And then evaluate your work. Show it to your client and see what she thinks. This is the most important part of the haircut, and it'll have her either loving you and calling you a genius or doing a drive-by shooting later on. So now that we've finished the internal part of her haircut, we're just gonna go around the perimeter and the front layers and just clean it up and make sure that all the ends kind of make sense and that there's nothing too straggly and everything just looks like a completed style. All right, so we're finished with Amanda's haircut. It looks really, really cool. We're gonna apply some product and then give her a rough dry. We wanna make sure that we don't overly style her hair. It's meant to look lived in rather than worked. She has a lot of wonderful natural texture to her hair. I wanted to kind of control it and utilize it so it doesn't do its own thing. So I'm doing kind of twists to control it just a little bit and creating a bit more of a ropey feel. It's not like a super technical thing, it's just to control the hair. After twisting the hair into shape, we're gonna gently diffuse, but we're not gonna scrunch. We're just gonna let it hang. We don't want to disrupt it too much. I like to work with my model's head upside down or backwards to allow the diffuser to kind of give a bit more volume just through the hair being pulled away from the scalp with gravity. So here we are with Amanda. We've finished her hair. I think it looks amazing. So you can see with her color, it looks lived in. And then with her cut, you can see, you know, the bangs are everything with this haircut. We go kind of deep with them. I love the way it kind of just wings in with her natural wave. And the shorter layers around the face, and if we turn you a little bit, you can see where it's a little more collapsed under here from the texture plus this fairly aggressive layering technique that we've done. So it's really, really cool the way it's opened up her face, brought light to her face. It's a strong shape, brings out her eyes. Her eyes are incredible. I knew they were nice before, but wow. I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed doing it for you. You can follow me on Instagram at Michael Levine Hair and check my blog at michaellevinehair.com. Stay tuned for more awesome videos on Pulp Riot Television at tv.pulpriothair.com. Be nice.